Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of my new series, Curiosity Matters. In this series, I'm going to be looking at the weird, the wonderful, and effectively anything else that has taken my interest, in the hope that it sparks a curiosity in you. In this first episode, I'm going to be talking about the world's oldest board game, something I'm very excited to share with you. So, dear viewer, without further ado, may I introduce to you the first episode of Curiosity Matters, the royal game of yore. So what is the royal game of yore, and why should you care? Well, to begin to answer that question, I'm going to ask you to cast your minds back to the early 1900s, and around 1920 or so. At this time, there was an archaeological dig happening in a place called ancient Mesopotamia, which is modern day Iraq. Now these archaeologists were digging on a site which used to be a royal cemetery in a place called Yor. And as they were sifting through the mud and the dirt and the grime and undoubtedly getting sunstroke because they were British, after all, they stumbled across, in amongst all these other treasures, a board which looked something like this. Along with the board they found dice, playing pieces, but there's one thing missing: the instructions. In fact, we would not actually know definitively how to play this game for several decades, until the 1980s. And it is this point I want to introduce a very important character to this story. A chap called Dr. Irving Finkel. Now, Dr. Finkel, which is a fantastic name, I must say, Dr. Finkel is, to this day, a curator at the British Museum. And one of his roles is that he translates ancient Mesopotamian tablets. Now, back in the 1980s, whilst he was translating one of these tablets, he realised that he'd stumbled across the instructions on how to play the royal game of yore. Now this would have been not only a fantastic moment for the museum and for history and for archaeology, but also a very personal one, I would imagine, to Dr. Irving Finkel. You see, Dr. Irving Finkel was undoubtedly the expert on this game. It's through his videos, which I will talk about later, that I was introduced to this game, and he talks at length about the effect that it had on him, how when he was growing up he made his own copy of the board in an attempt to try and work out how it was played. So obviously a huge deal. So as you can imagine, a very, very special moment. Now, for the game itself, and this is where I think it really is fascinating, this game, they have dated it to 4,500 BC. This game was being played thousands and thousands of years ago by our ancestors. And I think that is just fantastic. Can you imagine all those years ago, there were people walking into pubs, inns, meeting with friends or fellow travellers, and they would come together and gamble and probably fight over this board game. And I think that is a fantastic way to really connect us to history, to our ancestors, and for me is one of the absolutely fascinating things about this board game. 4,500 years old. So there we have it, viewer. Just to begin with, you now know a little bit about the history of this board game, how it was rediscovered in the 1920s and how we didn't really know how to play it until much, much later in time after that, and also the fact that this game is over 4,000 years old. The oldest board game to have known to have existed. But I am in no doubt that you probably are here because you want to know how the game is played. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So, here we have the board. The board itself in all its full glory. Now, this is everything you need. You need a board, of course, tokens and the dice. And what I'll do very quickly is just talk about each aspect and then talk about how it all comes together. Now, first of all, we will turn our attention to the board itself. So the board is sort of split into three. Each player on their own side has 6 tiles, and I refer to these as the trenches. You have to imagine that this is a battleground, and these are your troops going into war. But these 6 squares either side are the safe areas, the trenches. Okay, and you can't be touched in the trenches. Now this band in the middle, that's where all the fun happens, all the explosions and fightings and screaming and shouting, joy and despair. That's where this all takes place. For this is the area where you can win and lose, and it's the time that you are not safe. Next, you have your troops. You have 7 troops, and your aim is to try and move your troops from the trenches down through the battlefield, back into the trenches, and home. They get sent home to go and marry whoever they want to choose, or go and have a drink, and whatever it does that soldiers do on their off time. Now you move your troops as you'd expect with these dice. Just on a little side note, you probably notice that there is this out of place looking dice that has been drawn on very crudely, so some dots, and looks very, very handcrafty compared to the other dice. So the version of the game that I've got, I believe, is based on some alternative rules, perhaps even before it may have been produced before we even know how to play this game. So this is based on somebody's thoughts of how the game might have been played rather than what we know from the translated tablets. The rules I'm going to show you is what we know from Irving Finkel, the Finkel rules, in which there are 4 dice. In the original game they dug up, the dice were actually a pyramid in shape. This one came with cubes, with dice, and as you can see, the dice, they either have a dot or a blank face. But in the Irving Finkel rules there are four dice, which is why I've made this crudely formed 4th die. And as you can probably guess, you roll the die. So in this case, a 2. So I move my tokens forward. Now you can have as many tokens as you want on the go. So if I threw another number in my next go and it was a 3, I could move this one. Or if I just wanted to keep the same one moving, you can do that. The only rule is you can't have 2 discs occupying the same space. So for example, you couldn't have something that looks like that or something that looks like that. Okay, you can jump over. That's no problem. So if I was here and I threw a 3, 1, 2, 3, you can do that, but then I couldn't move it, so these pieces were stacking on top of each other. So far, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now, as you can see, the faces of this board each has a different pattern. They are similar to other ones, but you know there's a real range of colours. Now in the Irving Finkel rules, you don't have to worry about most of these. The only ones that you need to be aware of are the ones that look like flowers. Now there are 2 flowers in your trenches. So for red, there's 2 here, and for blue, there are 2 here, and there is 1 flower in the middle of the battleground. But what do these flowers mean? What has one of these flowers got to do with war? So if you land on one of these flowers, so for example, if I was red, if I was you, dear viewer, and you threw a 4, and you landed on this flower, you are able to go again. That's right, you're able to take a second go. How exciting. When you take your second go, you can either move the same tile, or you can move another tile. So if I threw a 2, for example, I could move another tile onto the board. The only difference to note is obviously this flower in the middle. Now, if you land on this flower in the middle, it means that you can't be touched by your opponent. This is a safe space for your troops, because you see, normally to take your opponent's piece, say I was here and my opponent, my challenger, threw a 4 and was allowed to go again, and then threw a 2, they might say, oh yes, my adversary is two tiles ahead of me, so they go 2, right? That means they've captured me and they've thrown me back into my trenches. That's right, you get sent all the way back and you have to start again, which when you're up here doesn't seem like a long way, but say you were sort of down here and your opponent threw a 4 and decided to move this disc 1, 2, 3, 4, so close to home, tantalising, and you get sent back, which is very, very sad. So yes, if you land on a flower, you get to take another go, you can move any piece. If you land on this flower, you get to take another go, but you also can't be taken. Okay, so again, if I threw a 2 and I was in this position as blue, 1, 2, no, not allowed. I would have to move another piece, or if I didn't have any other pieces to move because they'd all made it home, I'd be stuck, I couldn't move. So if you're here, you're safe and you can't be taken. So a very, very good place to be. The only final bit of game to be aware of is that when you're trying to get your piece into their home, back home, you have to throw the exact number to get there. So for example, if you're here, there are 2 spaces, 1, 2, to get home, so you'll have to throw a 2. Okay, if you don't throw a 2, if you throw a 3, a 4, or a 1, you can't go there. Okay, if you threw a 1, you could go there and you get to go again, but then you'd have to throw another 1 to get into there. When it comes down to the end of the game, you have to move. So if I was here and I was down to my last piece and I threw a 3, I might think, oh, I don't really want to go into the battlefield because I don't want to get taken. Well, tough bananas. You have to go. You have to go. So yeah, unless you can't move, you have to move your pieces, and that's effectively the game. And I'll just show you a few rounds so you get sort of a general idea of how it's played. So I'll go first as blue because I'm the presenter and I say so. So throw the dice, so I've thrown a 2. Okay, great. So I'll move there for 2. It can be a very quick-paced game. A very fast-paced game. Again, so you've thrown a 2 there. So you can see that it's rapid. Each game, I would say, takes about 20 minutes, so I've thrown another 2 there. Okay, so I might look at the board and think, oh, do I want to move my pick? Well, I can't move forward 2 here because my chap's already there. Okay, one of my troops is already there, but I can move this chap into the flower. And what we know is a flower allows me to go again. Okay, so fantastic. So I'll just roll again. I've just thrown a 1. Okay, so what am I going to do here? Well, I might think, well, if I go there, then there's a risk that the next guy might be taken. So what I'll do is I'll start building my troops up. You know, I'll start moving them out. And you think, oh, okay, so what's going to happen? Okay, so you've thrown a 1. So you might look at this. Do you move 1 there? Or do we get some troops rolling out? Let's get some troops building out. Okay. And I've thrown a 2. You have thrown a 4. Fantastic. So with a 4, you think, going to get another go if I go here. Right, so there we go. We go into there. Dice retrieved. Fantastic. Red, so you get another go. Okay, so you've thrown another 4. My God, 1, 2, 3. Right, so you've gone into the battlefield. Not only have you come into the battlefield, you've also landed on the flower in the middle of the battlefield. And you get another go. You get to go again. Fantastic stuff. Fantastic stuff from you, Drew. Okay, so this time it's a 2. Oh my God, what if I do this? Move forward 2. My God, another go. 3 goes in a row. Very frustrating. So that's a 3. Okay, what are we going to do with 3? Can't move this forward 3 because my piece is already there. Might want to push forward. Now this is where the strategy bit comes in. Do you push forward in the hope of getting back before the blues push out, or do you move one of these pieces? Well, I think because blue is so far behind and the max that you can roll is 4, we'll start pushing out. So you started pushing out. Good job. So say hypothetically you decided to move forward 3 and then in the next go I rolled a 2. 1, 2, there we go. Sends you back. Fantastic. But then in the next go, you threw a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 piece home, 6 more to go. It's a fantastic game. It always comes down to the wire. Even when you think you're pulling ahead, something always happens, and I've played it many, many times now, and every game has been close. So, there we have it. That is the raw game of yore, with its trenches and its war zones and its all sort of flowers and all that sort of stuff. You know, I still think about how amazing it is that we get to live in a time where, you know, we can play this game exactly as our ancestors did 4,000 years ago. And I think it's just a wonderful look back into sort of entertainment and the history and origins of board games. And I'm sure, like me, if you particularly like board games, you would have found this absolutely fascinating. But if you want to learn more about it, I would thoroughly recommend that you check out the videos by Dr. Irvin Finkel, who talks about the board games and its origins and its history and how he made his discoveries and bits and pieces about it with a lot more authority and expertise than I ever could. So I will post the links to his films via the British Museum in the description below, but I would thoroughly recommend that you check them out. Now, if you would like to give the game a go for yourself, you can of course pick up a physical copy of the game. There are copies on eBay, Etsy, and the British Museum also produced their own replicas, including a nice travel-sized raw game of yore as well, in case you wanted to take it on holiday on your travels and show off to your friends about how learned and great you are that you play this historical game. If you are not sure whether you want to buy a game, or you can also try it out online for free, which is where I started, and after playing it a few rounds I realised that yes, I want a tangible copy of this game. But again, I will post all the links in the description below, but you should definitely check it out, and you will quickly learn that, you know, even if you think you're running away with it, not everything is always as it seems. But I have certainly been rambling at you for far too long, viewer, so I am going to wish you a goodbye, and I will see you at the next one. Bye bye for now.